Hi, and welcome to Getting Biblical, the show where I drink too much and talk about my favorite Bible stories. I am Matt Smith, your host, and thank you for joining us today. For today's episode, we are back in the saddle covering the story of Moses. We talked about Moses as a baby. We talked about him seeing the magical burning bush and God talking to him and telling him he was supposed to go into Egypt and free all the Israelites from slavery. We talked about all that fun stuff. And then we took a couple weeks of a break talking about other topics that I wanted to discuss. And now we're back. We're finishing up the story, or this arc of Moses. And it's a huge story, a lot to cover. Today's portion is actually like 9 chapters that we're going to try to get through today. And it's such a big story in the Bible. I mean, it's what the Jewish holiday Passover is all about. I mean, it's just it's a monumental story. So we're going to try to do it justice, try to get it all covered today, and also do so in a timely manner. So that's the agenda. That's the goal for today. But before we begin, as always, let's talk about what I'm drinking. So today's drink is one that signifies in my brain the start of a vacation. Anytime I'm at an airport in the early morning, getting ready to fly out to some new destination, I always stop by the airport bar and grab one of these. I am, of course, talking about none other than the Bloody Mary. The Bloody Mary, at its core, is, of course, pretty much just tomato juice and vodka. And, there's definitely you can get more variety, you can do more stuff to it, and really should be more than just those two things, I think, is kind of the standard now. But at its base, that's where we're going to start from. And from there, most places or people that make it are going to include stuff like hot sauce, Tabasco sauce, Worcestershire sauce, lemon juice, throw some pepper in there, and of course the iconic celery stalk sticking up out of the top of it as a bare minimum almost. And can I just say real quick, as far as celery goes, celery can go F itself. I hate celery so much. Celery tastes like gross, tainted nothing. Like I don't know how to explain it other than it tastes like nothingness and gross at the same time. Maybe bitter is a better word. It's just like bitter nothingness. I don't know. I don't like it. I hate it. Occasionally, if it's with like chicken wings or whatever, and there's blue cheese that I can scoop it up, it does make for a decent blue cheese or ranch shovel. But even that, man, like, at what cost? Like, it's nasty, and it's all stringy when you bite into it, right? Like, breaks off, and then there's just like little shoots going out, little strings. Like, celery is the dental floss of the vegetable world, and I hate it. And I don't like to put it in my own Bloody Marys, but maybe that's just me. That probably is just me. It's definitely just me. So, but that's fine. I digress. The Bloody Mary, the drink is fun because there's just so much that you can do with it. It's, just like barbecue or whatever recipes, like every Bloody Mary, every person that makes one is going to make it a little bit differently to their taste, right? And you want it super spicy, you can make it super spicy. Dump a little bunch of hot sauce in there. You want it like to make a meal out of it and put a whole fried chicken as a garnish on top. I've seen bars do that, right? It's just all those different things that you can do with it, and it's super fun. So that's what we're drinking today. And I'm using the Moses vodka that we had a few episodes back. So I figured it was apropos to use it again as we continue the story of Moses. So we're doing 3 parts of the Moses vodka that we talked about. And then we've got 6 parts of a Bloody Mary mix. And just to keep things simple. And then here's where I get a little bit extra crazy. I do 1 part pickle juice. And 1 part, instead of Worcestershire sauce, I use A1 sauce. So another, 1 part of A1. And then I threw a few blue cheese stuffed olives in there and some baby pearl onions to sit at the bottom and just soak everything up as a little treat for when you're all done and all the juice itself or whatever, when all the liquid, the beverage is gone. You've got these little things at the bottom that I don't know, just taste amazing to me, just as they've just been marinating in the bottom of the Bloody Mary cocktail. So that's what we're doing today. I also some people on the rim of their glass, they'll do like salt or salt and pepper. I prefer to use celery salt on the rim. And I know I just said some very mean things about celery, but celery salt is different, and I'm a huge fan, especially on the rim of a Bloody Mary glass. I think it adds a little bit of an extra dynamic, a little bit more of a flavor profile than just regular old salt. So anyway, next time you're getting ready to do a bit of day drinking, and which the Bloody Mary is perfect for, like with the spice and everything, it just keeps you awake and not dozing off after you've had one too many or whatever. It's a great way to drink during the day and keep the party going. But anyways, next time you have a Bloody Mary, think of us, and that's what we're drinking today. So cheers. Okay, so let's get back to Sir Moses over here. Last time we talked about him, there was the mystical burning bush that we talked about, God telling him that he was going to be used to free the Hebrew people from slavery. And Moses was all like, I hate public speaking. I don't know if I can do this. Can we please find someone else to do the talking? And so they recruit Moses' brother, Aaron, and then God teaches Moses how to throw his walking stick down and make it transform into a snake. And all that jazz, all that good stuff. And here, now, so for the next part is when they're actually going to go to Pharaoh and start putting in their demands, putting in their requests. But here's what's interesting. God doesn't tell Moses and Aaron to just straight up ask Pharaoh to free the slaves. You can imagine like how well that would have gone over, right? Just walking up like, hey, you should let all your slaves go free, all your free labor and everything. If someone is super into owning human beings as slaves, they're probably not going to just give up their slaves because you asked nicely, right? Like that's not how this works. No, God instructs Aaron and Moses to just ask for the Pharaoh to release the Israelites to go out into the wilderness on a 3-day journey, 3 days travel time out into the wilderness to do some like holy sacrifices or whatever as a nation. That's all they were asking for. They weren't asking to have freedom forever. They weren't asking to be let go or anything. They just wanted to take this little vacation and then come back. And that's where we're going to kind of start. So Aaron and Moses, they go to Pharaoh's palace or whatever, and they submit a formal request to the Pharaoh on behalf of the Israelites. So Pharaoh is like checking his email or whatever, and he sees, email from Burning Bush Sheepherder 777 at AOL.com or whatever, and it says, Dear Sir, I am sending this message on behalf of our union head, Yahweh, who has sent me to put in a formal request with human resources that you give all your Israelite slaves a week's vacation so they can go on a 3-day journey into the wilderness for a team-building executive retreat. We promise to return to work as soon as we can, within no longer than 1 week's time or whatever. Thank you for your consideration in this request. And Pharaoh reads this email or whatever, gets this message, and he's like, Who? Who is this Yahweh? Never heard of him. It's like, I swear to Ra, you wire transfer money one time to a Nigerian prince, and everyone thinks they can walk all over you. It's like, he responds back to the email, vacation time is denied. And then Moses and Aaron reply back, please reconsider our request. For if the people of Israel do not go on this 3-day into the wilderness retreat, our union head will resort to other means of persuasion, right? Very, very mob boss sounding. And but the Pharaoh is not having it. He replies back, per my last email, vacation time is denied. Signed, the Pharaoh. And he shuts off his computer or whatever, and he goes to his slave master guys. He's like, hey, can you believe the gall of these people, asking for time off? We are in peak pyramid building season right now. I can't just let them go off on a week's vacation. Where's this coming from? By the way, what are the Hebrew slaves working on right now? What project? And slave masters or whatever, they're making bricks for the upcoming, pyramid expansion project that we have planned. We give them the straw and the supplies, and they grind it up together, and they make the bricks, and then they use the bricks and stuff, and pretty routine brick making process, boss. And Pharaoh's he's like, man, this Moses guy he's really getting on my nerves. Who does he think he is asking me for vacation for all these people? And he's like, you know what? Screw him, screw the slaves, if they have enough time to whine and to cry about working too hard, then you know what? We're going to give them something to cry about. Go ahead and spread the word. I still want them to make the bricks, but now it's going to be their responsibility to go into the field and gather the materials to make the bricks also. So they got to gather the materials and make the bricks. The quotas are the same, no slacking. That'll teach them to cry about some stuff, right? That's the plan. So now the Israelites have all this extra work thrown onto them, and it's not even really part of their job descriptions, and they're not even getting any more money for it. Like that ever happened to you, like in your job, and like someone quits or gets fired, and then like just magically all their extra shit gets put onto you, and you don't even get like a new title or anything, right? That type of thing. Yeah, that bullshit is happening to the Israelites right now. So naturally they get all mad and they get pissed and they go to Moses and they're like, WTF, man, you were supposed to free us from slavery, not give us more work. We should not have trusted your ass. You suck. And they're all mad. And Moses goes to God and he's like, yo, dog, you're making me look bad in front of your people. We just accomplished literally the opposite of what you wanted to do. Like, we were supposed to free them from slavery. We made their lives worse. And God's like, listen. I know what I'm doing. Know your role, Moses. Go back to Pharaoh. We ain't done yet. And when you go back to Pharaoh, make sure you teach Aaron the party tricks I showed you. So they go back to Pharaoh, and they have an actual appointment this time, I guess, or whatever. And Pharaoh he's like, okay, who's next? It's like it's a 3:00 appointment, all right? He's ending the day, and he's like, all right, who's the next appointment with? Like, what's next on the schedule? And they're like, oh, it's Moses and Aaron, those guys that were emailing you. And Pharaoh's like what? How did they get an appointment? Who are these guys? Like, what? Who scheduled? Who allowed them on my schedule? Like, was that Becky? Tell Becky she's fired and get me a new secretary. Like, this is unacceptable. And like, okay, but whatever. You're here now. Like, why are you guys back here again? I don't care what you have to say. I'm not giving you any vacation time. I'm not impressed by you. Why would I even listen to you? You don't even know any magic tricks. I can't take you seriously, which is almost verbatim what he says. And then Moses is like, okay, Aaron, do it now or whatever. And Aaron throws down the magic staff. And when he throws it down, it becomes a snake, just like we talked about before. But Pharaoh sees it and rolls his eyes hard and like claps his hands or whatever, and his wizards and magicians come out and they all throw down their own walking sticks to the ground, and they all turn into snakes, and the whole room is just filled with snakes that used to be sticks or whatever. It's just a mess. And Pharaoh is not impressed by this magic trick or whatever. But then, just to heighten the suspense or whatever, Aaron's snake stick, whatever, starts to eat all the other all the other walking staff turned snakes in the room. So he just starts gobbling them up and eating them all. And then when there's none left, when there's no more snakes in the room other than Aaron's, Aaron grabs the tail and it turns back into the walking stick, right? And I don't know if like Aaron's walking stick was like super thick now after eating the other snakes, or what exactly, or how it looked. I don't know if any of the wizards actually had any disabilities or anything, like if anybody actually needed their walking stick. If so, it's kind of a dick move, like they're propping themselves up on a wall or something, like throwing their walking stick down, turning it into a snake, and then like now it's gone, and now they have to, I don't know, they have to use their hover round or something to get out. I don't know. Not trying to make fun of disabled or handicapped people or whatever, but just like a dick move to have your snake eat up someone else's actual thing that they need to get around for mobility. Anyway, so Pharaoh, he sees all this, he doesn't give a shit, he doesn't care, and he just gets an even bigger, badder attitude, and he's like, whatever, I don't care about your magic tricks, get out of my office. And then Moses goes back to God and is like, the snake trick didn't work, boss, what now? So God's like, okay, no more parlor tricks. It's time to get our plagues on, right? We're pulling out the big guns. So, I don't know, like dramatic music, like plague number 1. So the next morning, the Pharaoh goes out to the Nile River. He's got like on his back porch or something, like one of those infinity pools, I think, that goes down into the Nile or something. So he's out there like taking a swim or doing something, and then he sees across the Nile River, he sees Moses and Aaron over there, and he's just like, you guys, like, what? Like, leave me alone. What are you doing? Like, it's my morning swim. What do you want? And they're like, we asked you, they're screaming from the other side of the Nile, we asked you nicely to let our people go, but you weren't listening. We told you our employer was very persuasive, right? Or that whatever I said, whatever bit I did earlier, the union head, whatever. Yeah, obviously they're talking about God, right? We told you our God was very persuasive. And then Aaron takes his magic walking stick and strikes the water of the Nile River with it. And as the Pharaoh looks on, he sees all the water in all the Nile River turn to blood. And it says, it's so metal, and it says all the water of the Nile and all the other rivers and bodies of water all throughout Egypt all turned to blood, and the fish died because, well, fish can't survive in blood, right? and nobody could drink the water, and it was super disgusting. But the Pharaoh, he still had a bad attitude, and he was not impressed. He like whatever, made some noise or whatever, and then he claps his hands again, and his wizards and his own magicians come out, and they have like a case, I think, of like bottled water, like Aquafina or Smart Water or something. I don't know, like some kind of bottled water. Well, the Pharaoh is probably pretty pretentious. What's the most pretentious bottle? Voss, maybe, like a case of Voss water, as what was brought out by the wizards and magicians, and they, while they were still sealed and wrapped up in their own packaging, they turned the bottled water into blood also. So the Pharaoh is not impressed by everything that's going on, and if I 1 second though. So they had this bottled water that was not turned into blood previously, and they turned it to blood themselves. And Pharaoh's ha, like, you're not so special, Moses. Like, my wizards can do that too. And then he whips around and walks back into his house or whatever. And he just doesn't give a shit, doesn't care about them. But if you think about it, it's kind of like Pharaoh, you just played yourself a little bit, because it's bad enough that the Nile River and all of its connecting offshoots or whatever, the biggest source of drinking water for the whole country is now blood. You also just turn what little water supply you have left, your bottled water, into more blood. Not super smart, but whatever. You had to make a point. I get it. On principle, you had to do this thing. So, it's Egypt. Water is kind of important, but anyway. So then the next day, that was plague 1. And then the next day, Moses comes back and is like, well, have you had enough yet? Let our people go, or we're going to go for round 2, and we're going to send frogs your way. Frogs are super weird, and they're gross, and we're going to send a shitload of them to you. So many frogs, dude. And this is a direct quote. It says they're going to come into your house, and into your bedroom, and on your bed, and into the house of your servants, and on your people, and into your ovens where you make your bread, and end quote or whatever. But it's just very descriptive of there are frogs everywhere, and it's nasty. But the Pharaoh, he's like, I don't care. Joke's on you. I like frogs. I love frogs. The more frogs, the merrier. Do what you got to do with the frogs. And so Moses and Aaron, they summon the frogs. And frogs come everywhere. They're just like it said. They're in the ovens. They're in the bread. They're in the bedrooms. You can't, when you go lay down to sleep at night, you got to pull off the covers or whatever. And there's just frogs everywhere. So, it doesn't take very long. As much as Pharaoh was, talking, smack or whatever, about 3 hours later or whatever, he comes back. He's like, hey, Moses, Aaron, so I hate frogs. I lied. They're everywhere. You win. I can't take it. If you get rid of the frogs, then your people can go into the wilderness for their retreat. We'll make a deal. And Moses is like, cool, done. We'll get rid of them. By tomorrow morning, they will be all gone. And Moses talks to God and blah, blah, blah. And then the frogs all leave and they jump back into the blood river or whatever. And so then the next day, Moses goes up to, gets another appointment and goes up to the Pharaoh. And he's like, okay, we got rid of the frogs. Now let my people go on their vacation. And the Pharaoh's like, I literally have no idea what you're talking about. We didn't have a deal. Get out of my office. And Moses is like, wow, really? Okay. And so Moses goes back to God. And he's like, hey, God, Pharaoh's being a real dick. What's next? So then the next day, that was plague 2, was the frogs. So the next day, Aaron takes the magic staff and strikes the ground itself. And then the dust of the ground forms into lice, into itchy, scratchy bugs that are on your skin and in your hair, and just lice everywhere, and it's horrible. And then Pharaoh sees it. Pharaoh sees what's happening, and he claps his hands again, and he brings out his wizards, and they come out, and they try to make lice appear out of nowhere, out of the dust or whatever. But this time, they can't. Right, so up until here, it was still like 2-2 wizards and whatever warlocks versus God and Moses and Aaron, and they could match. Or if you include the snakes, it was 3-3. So they at this point they were evenly matched, but at this point they couldn't make the lice out of dust, and they go to Pharaoh and they're like, "Bro, this time this is a legit plague. This is clearly the finger of God," is what it says. So like even the evil wizards are like, dang, man, like, you know, like, oh damn, like they can't compete with this, right? But Pharaoh still doesn't care. He still has a bad attitude, and he's like, I don't care about no lice. Get out of here, Moses. So then the next day, Moses talks to God or whatever, and here's what's important, real quick. Most of all of these first plagues that we talked about affected everyone in the land, right? Pharaoh, the Egyptians, the Israelites, everyone there was affected in some way by the blood and the frogs and the lice. Everyone in the region had a rough go of it. But now Moses threatens Pharaoh with a plague that is only going to affect the Egyptians and not the Israelites, right? Because it's really not fair that the Israelites are getting hit with the same stuff that is supposed to be punishing the Pharaoh or whatever. So the Israelites start getting a free pass on this stuff. So plague number 4, right? It's time for plague number 4, and the fourth one now is swarms of flies. And like, have you ever tried to go to sleep with a fly nearby, like buzzing around? Like, it is impossible. And imagine like a plague of them, like so many of them everywhere and buzzing and landing on your food, and it's just nasty and gross. And so all these flies are doing the fly things, and you know, Pharaoh's like, calls Moses in. He's like, I haven't slept in 4 days, and they just keep buzzing and buzzing, and it's going insane. And he's like, okay, listen, if you get rid of the flies, you can take your people and have your little convention or whatever you want to do. And, you know, of course, Moses is like, it's not a convention. It's a wilderness retreat and a sacrifice. And it's a 3-day journey. But we'll get rid of the flies and let us go out and we'll have a deal. So Moses gets rid of the flies and everything. But yet again, Pharaoh is still being a dick. And as soon as he comes back in to, like, let the people go, Pharaoh's like, I changed my mind. You know what? Wasn't worth it. Wasn't a good deal. It's a bad deal, bad trade. Let's do it again. Deal's off. And so then the next one, what are we at now? Like 5? The 5th plague, God threatens to kill all the cattle in Egypt with pestilence. We're talking horses. We're talking donkeys. We're talking camels, cows, whatever. Everything, all the livestock die of pestilence, right, is what they call it. But it still didn't change Pharaoh's mind. Pharaoh still doesn't even care. So now the next plague, where are we at? Like number 6 now? God tells Moses to grab some ash out of a fireplace and throw it up in the air, and it swirls around and flies out through all of Egypt, and like everything that this ash touches or whatever, it turns into boils on people's bodies, right? So like these nasty open sores, wounds, like boils everywhere, and all the Egyptians were afflicted. And it was so bad, it says that the Pharaoh's wizards and magicians had to leave the room, and it was just like scaly, nasty, like just pus filled, like just bad. But Pharaoh still doesn't care. He still doesn't care. Like, he's like, nope, I'm not giving up my slaves. Not gonna happen. I don't care. And so then we have another plague. The next plague God sends down, and literally he sends down the plague of hail. And it's not regular, ordinary hail. It says that there was lightning and hail, and the hail was massive, and it leveled all the trees and the plants in Egypt, and just destruction everywhere. That these, I don't even know how big they were, but like these massive like ice whatever hailstones hit. They just caused so much damage everywhere. All the trees and plants, and if anybody left any pets outside, the pets died. Right? It was bad. So then Pharaoh again goes to Moses. He's like, okay, enough. Like, stop the hail. Like, it's too much. If you stop the hail, then you guys can go back. You can take your week's vacation. And the hail stops. And then, of course, yet again, Pharaoh's like, nope, just kidding. Not happening. Like, he's being a real dick. But so then next, God sends a massive swarm of locusts into Egypt, and they eat up all the crops. Whatever crops were left even from the hail now got eaten even more by all the swarm of locusts, right? So just the past few days, like the pestilence took out like their cattle. Now the hail took down most of their trees and their harvests and whatever. And then the locusts took out whatever else was left for that. So now there's like hardly even food in Egypt, much less the blood water or whatever to drink. So it's a rough time in Egypt right now with everything that's going on. But still, even the Pharaoh was like, nope, you can't have them. Can't leave. I don't care. Like, he was so stubborn. So then the 9th plague comes, and God sends what it calls the darkness. And it's literal darkness. It's described as a heavy darkness, one that could be felt, like physically almost. And it says for 3 whole days, darkness covered Egypt so badly and so intensely that the Egyptians didn't even get out of bed. Like, that's how, like I don't know, like, just dreary and dark, and like they didn't see the sun, whatever. They couldn't see anything, but there was lights where the Israelites were. Like, they were fine. It was just in Egypt, so like the core Egypt, the city or whatever. So but still, the Pharaoh was like, that's fine. Like, you know what, I wanted to spend the next 3 days in bed. Like, I don't care about your darkness. Like, you can't have them. And so God and Moses, they have a discussion, and they're like, we're like 9 plagues in. Moses is like, no, we're nine plagues in. Nothing's working. Nothing's happening. Nothing's changing in mind. The guy's a massive dick. And God says, like, I'm going to send one last plague. This will be the plague to end all plagues. And so up until now, while he's made life very difficult, technically no one has died, right? Like, no one's, like, the boils and everything, like, all suck, but no one's actually died. Like, like, but did you die? Like, whatever. Like, but now it's time to ramp up the stakes, boys. So, and he goes through a whole chapter giving Moses very specific instructions, because this is going to be one. So remember how, like, before there was a few that both the Israelites and the Egyptians were afflicted by, and then the Israelites got a free pass and they didn't have to deal with some of the stuff. But now this last one is going to affect everybody in the region unless you prepare for it. And so God sets out these whole instructions on what Moses is supposed to tell everyone to do in order to not be affected by this 10th plague. And the plan is that God was setting out to kill all the firstborn males in the whole land, both human and animals and everything. All the firstborn males were in mortal danger. But kind of like before, again, he didn't want it to affect the Israelites, so he gives them these instructions. Part of the whole deal, which sounds like kind of weird and everything, but there's a bigger picture going on, so just bear with me. But the Israelites were told to make an animal sacrifice, either a sheep or a goat. And then after they sacrificed the animal, and there was a very specific, way they were supposed to do it. But when the sacrifice is done, they take some of the blood from the animal and they smear it on the door frame of their house, like on both the sides of the door and then across the top of it, right? So the whole arch, the door frame arch or whatever, if you will, should have blood covering it. And I'm actually really like over kind of simplifying it. There's a lot more to the whole thing, which I think I might get into another episode because it's really deep. But this is just on the just covering the basics of it, right? But as long as this blood is smeared on the doorframe of the house, then it says at midnight the angel of death is going to fly through the whole area of Egypt, and any house that did not have the blood on the doors any firstborn male in that house would die. But if the angel of death saw the blood on the house, then you were safe, right? So no blood, firstborn's dying, yes blood, everyone's safe, right? And that's all you got to do. Like, I mean, kind of a lot to like do the sacrifice and everything, but whatever. Like the blood on the house saves people from dying. Not that big of a deal. And then it happened, and all the Israelites, they did what they were told, and they had the blood up and everything, and the Egyptians didn't. I don't know. I can't remember. I should look it up. I can't remember if Moses even told some of the Egyptians also like what the plan was, like if they had an option and they just chose not to listen, or if it was a secret that he kept to himself. I'll have to go back and research that. I can't remember, but anyway, the Egyptians didn't have the blood on their doors, and the Israelites did, and so that night, the thing happened, and the angel of death came through Egypt and kills all the firstborn sons, and then old Ben Kenobi felt a great disturbance in the force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced. Everyone died everywhere. But for real, it says there was not even one Egyptian household where at least one person didn't die, right? So the whole country just had a big old, like mass murder or whatever, like mass death, like the whole country is distraught. And it says that, so that even includes the Pharaoh, right? Pharaoh's own firstborn son was also part of, like, caught up in all that. And so finally, Pharaoh is broken. They break Pharaoh, and he's like, you know what, Moses? Get the fuck out. Like, you get out of my country, take your people, get out tonight, leave tonight. I don't want to see your faces. I don't want to, like, I might change my mind, like, go now. And so Moses makes the announcement, and all the Israelites, they gather all their things, and they even have bread that was still rising, that for the next day, that they all had to, like, take out, before it had finished rising or whatever. They had to take it out before it could get all fluffy, and they all left Egypt that same night. About, like, 600,000, I think. It's 600,000 dudes, and it's not even including the women and children. Like, there's a lot of people, right? 600,000. So over a million, definitely, maybe even 1.4 or 5, I don't even know, like people, and and also their livestock, and a big old group of people. So, and as they're going out and they're leaving Egypt, God manifests himself there with the people and with the whole group and everything. And by day, he takes the form of a huge pillar of smoke, and by night, it's a huge pillar of fire. Right? It's crazy, just this massive. I don't know, that's just the smoke pillar that floats along with us. And I don't know. It was neat, I guess, right? Like, just showing a presence there. And so the Israelites have been traveling. As you can imagine, there's like a million people or whatever, and their animals all walking. They don't move super fast, right? It's desert. I mean, walking in sand by itself is a pain, much less with a million plus people. So they're not going super fast, and they make a little camp right next to what some would call the Red Sea, right? There's Red Sea on one side and the desert on the other side, and they're going to take a day breather or whatever, a little bit of a break, and they're in the wilderness here, and then Pharaoh and his guards or whatever are talking to themselves, and Pharaoh's like, what did I do? What was I thinking? Like, who's going to build my pyramids now? I got to get my slaves back. Like, I lost my mind. I had some temporary insanity because my son died. But, like, I shouldn't have rewarded them for this plague, for this curse, for killing my son. Like, what was I thinking? He says, you know what? Take my chariots, take my guards or whatever, take my troops, and I want you to go out there, chase the Israelites, and bring them back here. Like, this is not over. So back to the Israelites, right? They've got the wilderness on one side and the Red Sea on the other, and then they see the Egyptians moving in fast. And of course, they start to lose their shit. And they start to complain to Moses and God and everything, like what did you do? Like, and these guys, man, like, the passage basically says, Moses, you're a dick. We told you we were, quote unquote, happy in Egypt, living as slaves. We didn't have a problem. We didn't want to leave. Now you brought us out here to what? Die? You did all this stuff and brought us out into the desert. They're just going to slay us all. I think one of the quotes is like, what? There wasn't enough graves for us in Egypt, so you brought us out here in the desert so we could make our deaths easier or something like that. Like, they're just like, I don't know, like you don't remember, like just like it was 3 days ago that you were slaves. Like what? I don't know, man. People are weird, but like we hate you, Moses, and God says, he's not mad, but God's like, shut up, just watch what I'm about to go do, and he says, take a good long look at those Egyptians over there, for you will never see them again. Right? Like kind of like very dramatic, and moves his cloud self or whatever between the Egyptians and the Israelites, creating like a cloud wall or something. I guess it was just menacing enough or whatever. The Egyptians didn't want to drive through it, didn't want to go through it. So they just hung out on the other side of the cloud, and the Israelites were on the other side, safe. And while all that's happening, while God is cloud form body blocking all the Egyptians, Moses reaches out his hand and out stretches out his arms or whatever over the water, over the Red Sea, and a massive gust of wind from the east comes in and blows back the water. And it says the wind blows all night long and pushes the water back, and it ultimately made a wall of water on the left and on the right, and then the Israelites were able to move across the sea on dry land. Right? I'm sure we've all seen paintings or depictions of this scene, right? With the walls of water on both sides. And the Israelites are walking through on dry land to get to the other side, and God's holding the Egyptians back through the wall of cloud smoke or whatever. And just as the Israelites are almost to the other side, God lifts the cloud body or whatever, and the Egyptians like start driving forward again. And it kind of, I don't know why, like I just thought of like Mad Max or whatever, like Road Warrior or whatever. Like the cloud moves and they're like, yeah, get them or whatever. Like there's the one guy with I don't know, like nipple piercings or whatever. He's like rocking out, or I can't remember if that was in the movie or not. But I don't know, like they're just like going, like shooting down. Like these guys are not good guys, right? And they're chasing the Israelites through the wall. They're looking over. There's water on the right. There's water on the left. But they're driving fast. They're headed fast. And Pharaoh's there. He's leading the pack, right? He's right there. Yeah, just like in like Mad Max, right? Fury Road, whatever. The leader, Pharaoh himself, is at the front of the pack, chasing the slaves, trying to get them back. And then just as like the last Israelite steps out of the middle walkway and onto actual regular land, like not surrounded by water at all, as soon as like that last Israelite gets over, God's like, all right, Pharaoh, this is what you get for being a dick. And he makes the wheels of the chariots fall off, and the horses got confused, and just a major shit show right there in the middle of the two walls of water. And the Egyptians, they couldn't move or go anywhere, like their cars are broken and all that. And God tells Moses, okay, stretch out your arms again and move the waters back in place. And so Moses did, and then of course the waves, like a tsunami, like two tsunamis. Like is that the plural of tsunamis? Tsunamis? Two tsunamis? Tsunami A and Tsunami B on both sides, make an Egyptian sandwich with the two massive walls of water come crushing down and killing the dickhead Pharaoh and all his dickhead guards, and not one of them survived, right? Like, yay, mass murder. But they were dicks, it's fine. And then, the Israelites, they saw what happened. They saw this big miracle. They saw the walls of water and everything. They're like, cool, thanks, man, or something like that. And there might have been a whole chapter or whatnot about a big song being sung and all this stuff, but we're gonna skip through that. But that's the story of Passover. That's the story of the 10 plagues, the plagues of Egypt, whatever you want to call it. One of the most pivotal, incredible, landmark stories in the Bible. So we've got a lot more Moses to talk about in the future. And I think I'm going to do another episode coming up, not next week, but in like a month or so. I'm kind of working on some details where we're going to go in depth and look at the plagues and kind of behind the scenes what they actually mean. And it's actually some really cool stuff that I'm excited to talk about. So that's our show for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please find us on Facebook. We really appreciate it. Like our page on there, facebook.com/gettingbiblical. And that's going to do it for today's show. So again, thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic week. Cheers.